Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to everyone. So in the previous class, we have discussed the classification, artificial classification, natural classification, phylogenetic classification, and algae. Today, we are going to discuss bryophytes and pteridophyte. Before we proceed with the lecture, let's take the pre-reading question. And the question says, phycoerythrin is the major pigment in option 1 is red algae, option 2 is blue-green algae, option 3 is green algae, option 4 is brown algae. So phycoerythrin, it is found in the red algae. This phycoerythrin, it imparts the red color to the red algae. In brown algae, you will find fucoxanthin, which impart the brown color to the brown algae. In green algae, you will find chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, which impart the green color to the green algae. And blue-green algae is the cyanobacteria. And the question is asking, phycoerythrin is the major pigment in. Phycoerythrin is the major pigment in the red algae. So the correct option is 1. Question number 2 says, Spirogyra ulothrix show common features that are. Option A is both have colonial thallus and show haplontic life cycle. Option B is both show isogamy and ribbon-shaped chloroplast. Option C says both have filamentous thallus and show zygotic meiosis. Option D says both are green algae and have flagellated gametes. Spirogyra and ulothrix, they are green algae. Both are filamentous. The chloroplast shape in Spirogyra is ribbon-like. And the chloroplast shape in ulothrix is girdle-like. Girdle means band shape. Spirogyra, they produce similar gametes. That means isogamous reproduction, but they are non-flagellated. In ulothrix, they also produce similar gametes, but they are flagellated. That means they are motile. Now look at the option. Option 1 says both have colonial thallus and show haplontic life cycle. Yes, they show haplontic life cycle, but both does not have the colonial thallus. They have the filamentous thallus. So option 1 is wrong. Option B says the both show isogamy and ribbon-shaped chloroplast. Both show isogamy. Isogamy means similar gamete, the gametes which are similar in size. And ribbon-shaped chloroplast. No, ribbon-shaped chloroplast is present in Spirogyra. In Ulothrix, the chloroplast shape is girdle-like or band shape. So option B is incorrect. Option C says both have filamentous thallus. Yes, both have filamentous thallus. And show zygotic meiosis. Yes, they show zygotic meiosis. Option D says both are green algae. Yes, they are green algae and have flagellated gametes. No, Spirogyra, they have non-flagellated gametes. Ulothrix produces flagellated gametes. So option D is also incorrect. So the correct option is option number C, that both have filamentous thallus and show zygotic meiosis. This is a picture of kelp. Okay. Kelp belongs to brown algae. You can see this. They're very large in size. They can reach up to the height of 100 meters. They are highly branched. They are profusely branched. Profusely branched means that they are showing the repeated branching. Because of that, it gives away bushy appearance. And this image, you can see the many kelps are there. So it's forming a kelp forest. Now let's discuss the life cycle of algae. In algae, the main plant body is the gametophyte, which is haploid. Gameto means gamete, phyte is plant. So the plant body which bears the gamete is known as a gametophyte because the sex organs, they are present on the gametophyte. So this gametophyte bears the sex organ like antheridium. The male sex organ is the antheridium and the female sex organ is the oogonium. Antheridium, it produces the anthrozoids. Oogonium produces the egg. And the fertilization is taking place in the water. So it's an external fertilization in case of algae. After fertilization, a syngamy zygote is forming. And this single cell zygote, it represents the sporophyte. This zygote is diploid in number. It having a diploid ploidy. And this zygote, it undergo meiosis and produces the haploid spores. And these spores on germination produces the gametophyte. This is the whole life cycle of the algae. Here you can observe that the maximum portion of the life cycle, they are occupied by the haploid phase. So it's a haplontic life cycle. Or most of the algae, they show haplontic life cycle. I'm saying most, not all, because there are some exceptions are always there. Fucus is a brown algae. It shows diplontic life cycle. Kelps, Actocarpus, Polysiphonia, they show haplodiplontic life cycle. That is why we say that most of the algae, they show haplontic life cycle. Remember these examples. These are very important. Like Fucus, it shows diplontic life cycle. Ectocarpus, Kelps, Polysiphonia, they all show haplodiplontic life cycle. And one more important point, these sex organ, the antheridium and oogonium, they are unicellular and non-jacketed. Non-jacketed means that they are not protected by a layer or there is no protective covering around the sex organ. So please remember that in case of algae, the sex organ, they are unicellular and non-jacketed. Next, we are going to discuss is the bryophytes. Bryophytes, they are found in the moist, shady areas in the hills. They are known as amphibians of the plant kingdom. because they can grow on the soil, but they require water for their fertilization. So they are known as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. They play a very important role in the plant succession on the bare rocks and soil. During the Xerac succession, we know that the succession which occurs on the dry areas is known as a Xerac succession. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's see. This is a bare rock. In case of Xerac succession, the pioneer species are lichen. Lichens, they produce some kind of acid which helps in the weathering of the rocks and result in the formation of soils. Lichens are followed by mosses, then annual herbs, then perennial herbs, then trees. This is how the succession takes place. So the mosses, they play an important role in the plant succession on the bare rocks and soil. Bryophytes, they do not have the true roots, stems, or leaves. They have a root-like structure, which are like rhizoids. They have a leaf-like or stem-like structure. Please remember that they do not have a true root, stems, or leaves. In bryophyte, the main plant body is the gametophyte, which is haploid in nature. In case of algae, you have studied that the sex organs, they are unicellular and non-jacketed. But in case of bryophyte, the sex organs, they are multicellular and they are jacketed. The male sex organ are antheridium, which produces the biflagellated anthrozoid. Female sex organ are archegonium, which is flask-shaped and it produces a single egg. When the anthrozoid come in contact with the egg, it fuses with the egg and zygote is formed. This zygote give rise to a multicellular sporophyte, and this sporophyte get differentiated into foot seta and capsule. In the capsule, spore mother cells are present, and in the spore mother cell, meiosis occur and the haploid spores are formed. And these haploid spores, on germination, they form the gametophyte. Here in the image, you can see this is a gametophyte. This portion is the gametophyte, and this is the sporophyte, right? You can see that the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte for the nourishment and development. Please remember, in case of bryophyte, the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte for its nourishment and development. And gametophyte is dominant, it is independent, it is green, it is photosynthetic in nature. And the main plant body of the bryophyte is gametophyte. Some mosses, they provide food for the herbaceous mammals, birds, and other animals. Very important point, sphagnum. When the sphagnum, it undergoes a partial decomposition, it forms a peat. Peat is used as a fuel, and it also used as a packing material for transshipment of the living material, because the mosses, they have the high water holding capacity, so we can use it as a packaging material for the shipment of the living materials. And these mosses, they also form a very dense mat on the soil, because of which, if the rain is falling, it does not have a direct impact on the soil. So it also prevents the soil erosion. Mosses, they generally have more ecological importance as compared to the economic importance. In bryophytes, we are going to discuss liverworts and mosses. First, we are going to discuss is the liverwort. The major example of liverwort is Markensia. Mostly, all the bryophytes, they are bisexual, but the exception is Markensia. Markensia is unisexual or dioecious. You can see this in the image. There's a male thallus is present and there's a female thallus. So it is unisexual or dioecious. They have dorsiventral thallus. Dorsiventral means there's a dorsal surface and the ventral surface. Dorsal is the upper surface, ventral is the lower surface, and they're closely appressed to the substratum. That means they're flattened. Okay, appressed means flattened. And one more important point regarding the Markensia, that the asexual reproduction takes place through gamma cups. You can see the small asexual birds. These are the gamma cups. These gamma, they are green, multicellular, and the asexual birds. They get detached from the main parent body, and they have the ability to give rise to a new individual. Please remember this point, that the gamma cup is the feature of Markensia, and Markensia is a liverwort. And the Markensia, they're unisexual and dioecious. There's an archegoniophore is present. This is a female thallus. In the female thallus, there's an archegoniophore, which is a stalk, and on the top is the archegonia. In the male thallus, there is an enthridiophore is present, which is a stalk. And on the top, there's an enthridium is present, which are going to produce the male gamete. Enthridium will produce the male gamete, and then archegonium will produce a female gamete, which is egg. Okay, so with enthridium, they will produce the anthrozoid, and anthrozoid, when it come in contact with the egg or present in the archegonium, they get fuses and they form a zygote, and this zygote will produce a sporophyte, and this sporophyte undergo differentiation to form the foot, seta, and capsule. And these capsule, they contain the spore mother cell. So meiosis will occur in spore mother cell, and haploid spores are formed. And these spores, on germination, will produce the gametophyte. These are some of the pictures of the Markensia here. In this picture, you can see these small, these all are gamma cups. In this picture, you can see the archegoniophore and the archegonia on the top. This is a female thallus of Markensia. This is a male thallus of Markensia on the right-hand side. These are the enthridiophore. And here the enthridium are present, which are going to produce the male gamete, which are anthrozoid. Okay, next we are going to discuss is mosses. Here in the mosses, the gametophyte consists of two stages. Number one is the protonema stage, and the second one is the leafy stage. Let me show you with the help of a life cycle, then it will be more clear. This is a life cycle of bryophyte. In bryophyte also, the main plant body is the gametophyte, which is haploid. And this gametophyte, it bears the male sex organ and the female sex organ. Male sex organ is the enthridium, and the female sex organ is the archegonium. Enthridium will produce the anthrozoid, archegonium will produce the egg. When the anthrozoid and the egg diffuses or undergo fertilization, they produce zygote. Zygote is diploid. This zygote will produce a multicellular sporophyte. This sporophyte is differentiated into foot, seta, and capsule. Foot is for the attachment. Seta is a stalk, and capsule, it has the spore mother cell. These spore mother cells are also diploid. Okay, these spore mother cells undergo meiosis, and they produce a haploid spores. In case of liverworts, okay, in case of liverworts, these spores, they can directly germinate into gametophyte. Okay, but in case of mosses, these spores, they will first form the primary protonema, then secondary protonema, and secondary protonema, they have lateral buds. And these lateral buds, they will form the leafy gametophyte. Okay, let me show it to you with the help of a diagram as well. If this is a spore, first it will form the primary protonema, then secondary protonema. Let's say this is primary protonema, This is secondary protonema. This secondary protonema, it has the lateral buds. These lateral buds, they will give rise to leafy gametophyte. These leafy gametophyte, they bear the sex organ. Okay, you will observe this in case of mosses. Please remember that primary protonema, secondary protonema, and these lateral bud giving rise to leafy gametophyte, you observe this in direct germination in case of mosses. Here, in liverworts, there's a direct germination. Spores are directly germinating to form the gametophyte. But in case of mosses, first you will observe the primary protonema, then secondary protonema. Secondary protonema, they are giving rise to lateral buds, and lateral buds, they are forming the leafy gametophyte, which is bearing these sex organs. Okay. Here also the same thing is written, that gametophyte, it consists of two stages. First stage is the protonema stage, which develops from the spore. Second stage is the leafy stage, which develops from the secondary protonema as lateral buds. These leafy stage, they are erect and they are attached to the soil with the multicellular branch rhizoids. In case of liverworts, the rhizoid, they are unicellular and unbranched. But in case of mosses, the rhizoids are multicellular and branched rhizoid. Remember this point, this difference. And the leafy gametophyte bear the sex organs. Here in the image, you can see this is a example of funaria, which is a moss. This portion represents the gametophyte. This is a leafy gametophyte, and this leafy gametophyte bears the sex organ. And the male sex organ, which is antherium, will produce the antherozoid. The female sex organ, which is the archegonium, which produces the egg. Antherozoid and egg diffuses, they will form a zygote. Zygote will develop into the sporophyte. This is the sporophyte. Now the zygote has developed into the sporophyte, and sporophyte has differentiated into fourth setae capsule. Here you can see this sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. Okay, please remember this, that in case of bryophyte, the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte for nourishment and development, and the gametophyte is independent. It is dominant. Photosynthetic. Green in color. But the sporophyte, it is dependent on gametophyte for nourishment and development. And these spores, they have the spore mother cells, which undergo meiosis, and they will produce a haploid spores. And again, that haploid spores, they will form a primary protonema, then secondary protonema, and the secondary protonema will bear the lateral buds, which give rise to a leafy gametophyte in case of mosses. Examples are funaria, polytrichum, sphagnum. Remember all these examples. These are very important. And please remember that the peat is obtained from sphagnum. Okay, examples are very important. This I've already discussed. Next, we are going to discuss is the pteridophyte. Pteridophyte, they are found in the cool, damp, shady places. They have a vascular tissue like xylem and phloem. Please remember, in case of bryophytes, okay, in case of bryophytes, the vascular tissues are absent. Okay, but in case of pteridophyte, the vascular tissues are present. Pteridophyte is the first trichophyta. Please remember this, because the vascular tissues are present in case of pteridophyte. In case of bryophyte, the main plant body is gametophyte, but in case of pteridophyte, the main plant body is the sporophyte. Remember this. In case of bryophyte, you observe that there's no true leaves, stems, or root, right? But in case of pteridophyte, there's a true stem is present, true root is present, true leaves are present. Remember this, it's important, okay? And the leaves in pteridophyte could be small and it could be large, okay? First, let me discuss the life cycle, then it will become very easy for you to understand the pteridophyte, okay? I've already told you that the main plant body in case of pteridophyte is a sporophyte, right? And this sporophyte, it is diploid. This sporophyte, they have photosynthetic leaves also and reproductive leaf also. The reproductive leaves are known as sporophylls. And these sporophyll, in some species, you will observe they are clustered together and they form a cone like this. They are clustered together and they form a cone. In case of equisetum, you will observe in case of equisetum, there's a strobilus or cone is present because these sporophylls, they come together and they will form a cluster. So these sporophylls, they have sporangia. Okay, for example, if this is a leaf, you will observe here sporangia are present. These sporangia, they have spore mother cell. These are also diploid in nature, right? These spore mother cell, they will undergo meiosis and they will produce the haploid spores. These haploid spores on germination will produce a gametophyte. And here the name of the gametophyte is prothallus. Okay, please remember that this gametophyte, it is independent. It is green, multicellular, small. Okay, please remember all these points. And the name that in case of Pteridophyta, the gametophyte is prothallus. This gametophyte, it bears the sex organ, like male sex organ are the antheridium and the female sex organ are archegonium. Antheridium will produce the anthrozoid. Archegonium will produce the egg. Okay. When anthrozoid and egg fuses, they will produce a zygote. After fertilization, zygote are formed and the zygote is diploid. This zygote undergo mitosis and form embryo. Embryo will again form the sporophyte. Okay. And you will observe that from here till here, this is the haploid phase. This is the diploid phase. In the algae, the major portion is occupied by the haploid phase. So it is a haplontic life cycle. But in case of pteridophyte and even in case of bryophyte also, haplodiplontic life cycle is observed because you can observe there's a diploid phase is also and haploid phase is also there. And they're having an almost same proportion. So we call that the bryophyte and the pteridophyte, they have haplodiplontic life cycle. Most of the algae, they have haplontic life cycle. Okay, please remember this. And there's a fucus algae, which is a brown algae. They have diplontic life cycle. There's a Actocarpus, Polysiphonia, the kelps. They all have haplodiplontic life cycle. Please remember these exceptions and the example. They are very important for the exam point of view. Okay, please remember the students. And in these life cycle, there you will see the alteration of generation, like the sporophyte is present. After the sporophyte, you will observing this gametophyte, then again the sporophyte. So you're seeing the alteration of generation is there. Like there's a sporophyte also in the life cycle, there's a gametophyte phase also. Okay. This I've already told you that there's a sporophylls in some species, the sporophyll, they cluster together and they form a strobili or cones, as in case of Silagilana and the equisetum. This portion I've already told you that the gametophyte in case of pteridophyte is prothallus, and it is small, it is multicellular, it is independent, it is photosynthetic. Okay. And this is also important that the gametophyte, these gametophyte, they require a cool, damp and shady places to grow because they require water for fertilization. Because of this, they have a very narrow geographical distribution. Please remember this, that pteridophyte, the distribution is very narrow because they required water for fertilization. That is why they generally grow in the cool, damp, and shady places. Okay. And in most of the pteridophyte, they produce homospores. Homo means same. Sporus is spore. Okay. So most of the pteridophyte, they are homosporous. That means they produce the same type of spores. But there are some exceptions, which are Silagilena and Salvinia. They are heterosporous. Please remember this. This is also important. And they are heterosporous. They produce two type of spores, like microspores, which are small spores, like macrospores, which are large spores. And in Pteridophyta, you will observe that the Pteridophyta shows the precursor of the seed habit. Precursor means that it shows the symptoms of seed habit, but the seed formation does not take place in Pteridophyta. Please remember this very important point. It shows the symptom. That means it is a precursor to the seed habit, but the seed formation does not occur in Pteridophyta. You will observe the seed formation in case of gymnosperm and angiosperm, right? This term sperm is for seed. Okay. This sperm, they represent seeds only. Okay, so we will observe seed in case of gymnosperm and angiosperms. And please remember these examples. The Pteridophyta, they are further classified into 4 classes. There is Liopsida, which includes Xylotum; Lycopsida, which includes Silagilena, Lycopodium; Synopsida, which includes Equisetum; Pteriopsida, which includes Diopteris, Pteris, and Adiatum. Okay, examples are very important. Okay, now let's take a question. Question says gamma are present in. Number 1 is mosses. Number 2 is Pteridophyta. Number 3 is some gymnosperm. Number 4 is some liverworts. Gamma are present in. So I've launched the poll. Quickly answer me through poll, or you can even answer through chat box as well. What do you think? What will be the correct option for this question? They're asking about the gamma cup. Okay. 50% have answer 1, 50% have answer 4th. I want all of you to participate. Okay. So the correct option is gamma. Sorry, the correct option is option number 4th, which is some liverworts. I told you when I was discussing Markensia or liverwort that gamma, they are the asexual birds. These gamma cup, they get detached from the parent or the main plant body. And form a new individual. And you will observe this gamma in liverworts. Example is Markensia. Like this is, I'm drawing a thallus of Markensia. These are the gamma curve. These are rhizoids. Okay, so the correct option is option number 4. I hope it is clear to everyone. Question 2 says match list 1 with list 2. List 1 has Chlamydomonas, Cycas, Selaginella, and Sphagnum. List 2 has moss, pteridophyte, algae, and gymnosperm. Choose the correct answer from the option given below. So poll has been launched. Quickly answer what you think, what will be the correct option for this question. Some have answer B, some have answer C, some have answer D. Okay, let's see the correct answer. List 1A says Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas is a green algae. And it is unicellular. Remember this. So A3. B, Cycas. Cycas is gymnosperm. So B, fourth. C, Selaginella. Selaginella is a pteridophyte. And please remember, in Selaginella and Salvinia, they are heterosporous. Please remember this point. Sphagnum is a moss. And from sphagnum, we obtain peat. And peat is used as a fuel, or is also used for as a packaging material for the shipment of the living material. Please remember this because the moss, they have a high water holding capacity. So A3, B4, C2, D1. So the correct option is 2. I hope it is clear to everyone. If you have any doubt, please let me know through the chat box. So today we have discussed bryophyte, we have discussed pteridophyte, we have discussed all the important points regarding bryophytes and pteridophyte, their life cycle. In the starting also, I have discussed the life cycle of algae also. Okay, so this is what we have covered today. And tomorrow, we are going to discuss gymnosperm, angiosperm, life cycle, and alteration of generation. If you have any doubt, please let me know in the chat box. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you all. Have a nice day and see you in the next class.